of the Tigercast.
All right, here we go. Tigercast is back Tuesday night. We're going live for the first time in 7 or 8 months. I'm sitting literally in a pitch black room, so I'm already pissed off at that because the light globe's blown. And then we have to deal with the bullshit from the tribunal tonight again. Before, I'll say, because I'm not sure if the others are going to join in my sentiments, let fly at the MRO. I'll introduce our guests for the evening. You can hear one of them chuckling in the background because he thinks this is highly amusing that it's got me wound up. Captain Blood 17, welcome back, mate.
Good evening, how are we? Folks, if you had heard, this is the angriest I've ever heard Michael behind the scenes. He is so wound up, it's amazing.
It triggered me. It triggered me yesterday afternoon when it even got cited. That's how bad it was. I even forgot to send through the agenda. That's how wound up I was. This is the first time I think we've caught up since the player-sponsored nights. We might even touch on that a little bit later as well. Your mate Camden doing well.
I'd like to say that I brought him into good form by playing a very ordinary game of bowls and just getting his confidence up.
I'm actually shocked that you haven't written that anywhere on the form, to be honest. I was honestly keeping an eye out for you claiming his form run at the moment, but no, you've done well to hold back there.
You know I don't like to boast and brag about things, Michael's. Come on.
We'll give that 5 or 10 minutes and we'll see if that's a different story. And the second guest tonight is a regular when it comes to the Essendon games, Loonerty from the Essendon board. Welcome to you, mate.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me. Hey, Captain Blood.
G'day, mate. How are you?
No,
good. It sounds like you guys don't even really need me. You could probably do a whole podcast on the MRO.
Well, I think you might have a bit to add in with the goalpost gate, I reckon. That's going to be your wheelhouse right there, because I went into bat for you the other week, so we are friends on that front.
Very good.
I do apologise you're going to have to listen to a bit of a rant about the MRP, but I'm sure you'll probably end up agreeing anyway.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, you two coming together for this episode was an interesting way it happened, wasn't it? Because Loonerty, you, if I remember correctly, listened into one of our episodes that I posted on the Speed FA board, and just by chance it was the one where Captain Blood teed off on James Hird in the first 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think I was listening to a Sweet FA podcast, and then it just auto-played onto the next episode.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so I heard that little tirade.
And he sent me a demand that I must be on with Captain Blood 17. Now, I told CB this, and he got a little bit scared and defensive. He's like, oh, is he all right? Is he all right? I'm like, yeah, he's fine. It's okay. He's having a bit of a laugh. So I thought that was quite amusing that of all episodes for that to autoplay, it was that one.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
But to be fair, though, you do have a bit of a soft spot for Essendon, don't you, CB, surely?
Look, I'm going to fess up. This may surprise listeners out there. They're my most hated team. They are... I've just sat in some horrible games. They've said some horrible things to me over the journey. And I'm not even going to go into the whole supplement thing, but that was probably the tipping point. And then there's no going back. There's no go back for that in my eyes. Fair
enough. All right, well, we're going to get stuck into the MRP because what transpired tonight is complete and utter bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Ivan Soldo obviously got cited for what can only be described as a love tap to James Worpel, and I'm not trying to downplay Worpel or say he's a bad person because he's not. He seems like a reasonable player. But when you have the week before the MRP come out and not even ask the question about Fife or Ablett about their intentional elbows when one of them left the ground and the other one was pretty forceful to Tom Lynch's face, and then all of a sudden this gets cited, it's just beyond belief. So the tribunal tonight, it was decided that the appeal was rejected because they felt that, I suppose they felt it was intentional, because that's what we try to argue, wasn't it, CB, that it wasn't intentional, it was accidental or careless. And I can't understand how the tribunal come to that conclusion, because if you watch the footage and break it down, Worpel moved into Soldo's path. He dropped his knees just before impact, which meant the impact was then higher than what it was originally going to be, and he got up straight away and went on to get 26 touches and was one of the Hawks' best. Now, last week, if you read the MRP outcome from our mate Chriso, the reason why the other two boys didn't get rubbed out was because there was insufficient force, because the opposition player that they hit kept on playing the game. Warple played the freaking game out, Chriso, and got a lot of the ball. He was fine. Why doesn't that come into account for us as well? I don't get it. So it's beyond annoying, this scenario, because at the end of the day, it's come down to this. Soldo's walked into the MRP, or to the AFL house. He's gone up to the front door, and they said, "Oh, what's your name, mate? We're just going to check you off the list." It's Ivan Soldo. "Oh, so you're not an Ablett or a Fife? Well, you know what? You're rooted." And it's as simple as that. No Brownlow medal, and you're gone. And Wayne Carey, like you said before, CB off air, Wayne Carey picked it a mile out, and you're right. Now the media identities are now waking up to this. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any backlash from it, apart from Richmond people.
I'm just it's a bit like the holding the ball rules at the moment. I no longer understand what holding the ball is, and I now no longer understand how they can come to these conclusions, because I was always at the understanding, I guess it's a football act. That's one of the things they assess is a football act. And then when it comes to issues like this, where it's off the ball, he's copped one high, then it comes down to what I thought they were really assessing, using the medical reports as part of their assessment. And in this case here, like I said, the guy's got up. He's played a very good game. He was very good on the weekend, Warple. And yet somehow our bloke gets a week. Now, I've always, as I said last week when you talked about the Fife incident, if it hadn't have been a 200-centimetre, 100-kilo athlete that Fife hit in the head, if it had been Higgins or Castagna, do you reckon he would have got up from that hit from Fife?
No.
It would have been a totally different conversation. And I'm laughing because it is a joke to me, and I fully expected Soldo to get the week. That's why I'm laughing. The fix was in. I personally thought it was going to happen.
And to make it worse, and I didn't know of this until tonight, I'm assuming that Crocodoc's correct with what he wrote, was that it's written into the tribunal guidelines that previous incidents cannot be used as evidence, so you can't cite precedents as a reason to get off a suspension. So they can go ahead and make all these decisions on Fife, on Ablett or whatever, and for incidents that were less, no one can say, "Oh yeah, but hang on, you did this and gave that no weeks." No one can do that. So they're pretty much free to make up whatever bullshit they want and rub out whoever they want for whatever they want, and there's no repercussions and no way for clubs to try and defend themselves other than by just the incident on its merit. And that's just mind-blowing that they can get away with doing that.
Kids, if you're out there listening, I'm just going to say this. There's a very old, the greatest ever punk band, the Sex Pistols. And on Johnny Rotten's last ever show, so do us a favour, read about this band, learn their history. And the very last show, Johnny Rotten says to the crowd, "Do you ever get the feeling you've been had?" It's on YouTube, check it out. And that is how I feel about the AFL right now. It's a con job.
Like I said before, I've even got a Collingwood supporter at work who came up to me today and he said, "I honestly believe that because apparently Gil and Christo are really close, that they just sit there over a glass of red and go, right, how can we just troll everyone this week? What kind of bullshit can we make up to create headlines and clickbait?" Because that's what it feels like. It honestly does.
I'll challenge that. I would suggest it's the other way. I would suggest that the AFL is a very reactionary competition. So the outrage of Ablett and Fife getting off, all of a sudden this week they're sending a message.
You might be right.
That's what I reckon.
That's a very AFL thing to do.
Well, how is that acceptable, though? I mean, they're letting themselves treat the system effectively, and they're just taking the piss out of everyone. Your mob Loonerty, you really, honestly, should have won that Sydney game with a kick from the goal line. Like, how can they say that they tick off the goalpost climbing, but then fine the bloke for doing it?
Yeah, that's what's been really confusing, I think, and I think the club even asked exactly that to the AFL. How can they both fine him but not pay the free kick?
And someone else made a point. It's similar to how they have come out and said that there's no such thing as tanking, but we're going to fine you, Melbourne, for doing it.
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's just really confusing.
Lindy, you heard what I just said before about how I feel about your club. But take this to the bank. Against Collingwood, you guys got absolutely ripped off. It was a disgrace. And I'll side with you guys on this game against Sydney. What happened with Rampy going up the post was an absolute farce. You guys have been denied 2 wins in my eyes.
Yeah, I won't disagree. I think the Collingwood game hurt a lot more because I felt like the overall performance was a lot better. Sydney, just in general, was just a shit. Sorry, can I swear? I don't know how strict you are
No,
with
that's
it.
okay.
Anyway, just with AdSense, looming over the board now.
Jesus.
But I felt like the Sydney performance was just pretty awful in general, and we should really never have been in that position. So that, yeah, it was disappointing to not get a 4 points that we probably really should have rightfully been given. It sort of maybe would have taken away from the fact that the performance was just subpar in general. So I'm not as bothered by it, but it is just bizarre that they can fine Rampy for doing it, but then just not pay the free kick when it's in the rules. And I have seen some people suggest that, well, the rule says you have to intentionally be shaking the post, and so he was just climbing it, not intentionally shaking it. But the act of climbing it shakes the post.
Exactly.
So where can you go with that?
But that's the thing. They treat us like dickheads. They treat us like with that is utter contempt in my eyes. That explanation is utter contempt. How else can you view it?
I understand that it would have been a really bizarre way for the game to end. So, but it's in the rules.
That's right.
They exist for a reason. So,
do yourself a favour. Did you guys listen to SEN today and listen to Nathan Buckley?
No, I didn't.
The conversation come back up. So they were talking about the umpiring, and they were talking about, again, we have rules, but then it appears we've all now had a set of guidelines come in, to which Buckley agreed. And it was interesting. They were talking about 666 and things like that. Now, he said a comment that seems to have got through, sort of slipped past a few outlets. But he said that clubs are frustrated with the 666, and particularly the letter of the law. They said because at the moment, umpires are identifying things that should be free kicks, but they're not paying them. He said on the weekend, Carlton had already infringed on the 666, right? Then all of a sudden in the game, they've done it again. The Collingwood coaches on the sidelines have gone to the assistant umpires and said, look, they've infringed. It should be our free kick. They said, yeah, you're right, but then they did nothing about it. So there is frustrations from when the AFL is telling us, all is good, 666, wonderful, and Bruce and everybody's jerking off on TV about it. Trust me, behind the scenes, it just seems that all isn't what it seems.
Because they're going with this bullshit thing about, but it's about the feel of the game. No, rules are written for a reason. Apply them accordingly, and it's as simple as that. Don't make it any more hard or any more grey areas. I mean, it's a hard enough game to umpire as it is, but just pay the free kicks that are there to be paid as per what's written in the rule book.
I really wonder. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think the umpire's confidence is shot. The umpiring division is confident because the actual AFL, with their bullshit rules and what they've tried to impose in the game, they've made it too hard for these guys to actually adjudicate the game. That's how I feel about it.
I sort of wonder if the Rampy incident happened in the first quarter, like halfway through the first quarter, would they have paid a free kick then? Is it just because it was a kick after the siren that it didn't get paid?
I think that's a good call because, like you said, it was a deciding factor for the game, and the umpire would know that there'd be a lot of heat coming his way by paying it, but he broke a rule. You can have all the heat all you want, but they've copped more heat for not paying the free kick based on the rule that was written. But I think you're right. If it was earlier on, I wouldn't have been shocked if they did pay it.
Yeah.
And if they didn't know the rule, they're better off coming out, and I've said this last week, saying, look, sorry, we missed it. We didn't quite understand the rule properly because it's not something that happens that often. We apologise. We're going to work harder, getting better, etc., etc. And everyone would have gone, okay, shit, they stuffed up, but they've put their hand up, fair play, move on. But they just won't do it.
They never concede anything.
No, never.
It's all ticked off. They're saying in the NFL in America, the actual umpires hold a conference. They review it. And then they'll actually come out, and if they've made a mistake, like I think that New Orleans one, the umpires come out and said, yeah, we made a mistake. It cost New Orleans a game, but they still come out and said, yep, we cocked it up. Now, if we just had a bit more honesty in our competition, I think people would accept it, be more accepting, other than getting treated like mushrooms at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely agree. All right, I've had enough ranting about that. I could rant for hours and hours. They're just incompetent beyond belief, but it is what it is. But we did have a couple of games on the weekend that were played. So, CB, the Tigers, we went right against the Hawks. 14-11-95, defeated the Hawks 8-11-59 by 36 points. Must admit, it was a bit of a surprise that we won by that much, but after about quarter time, we probably controlled the game pretty well. We had Caddy and Lynch with 3 goals each, and how was Dusty? Back to his best, 2 goals, 37 disposals. And like we spoke about on the message, it was his hunting the ball and his leadership that really stood out for me.
I think look, the result actually wasn't surprising to me. I honestly thought it was never in doubt. Very confident that we would smack the Hawks. With Dusty, I'll say he was back to his 2017 and 2018 form. It was just good to have the King back on the MCG doing his thing. And he looked, from the outset, hungry. And what stood out when you watched him, he's certainly taking on it looks like he's taking on some leadership attributes, where he's guiding, he's talking to people. And I think that's very exciting because it's not something that we previously seen from Dusty. Would that be a fair call?
I think that's a very fair call, and it could be the challenge he needed to take his game, or get his game back on track, I suppose. Maybe, I don't want to say he got complacent because that's probably a little bit harsh, but maybe he just needed that new extra challenge to really get the fire in his belly again to be a leader of the club. And yeah, it is. It was definitely things we hadn't seen before, which was really good. And the new Puma boots, it has to have been them as well.
So he's not sponsored by Puma, though, is he? He's just gone back to them.
I think he's just wearing whatever boots feel best, and he's just up for grabs at the moment. But I wouldn't be against him wearing those same boots every week.
Yeah. Well, like I said, mate, if he's going to play like that, mate, get a truckload of them.
And I know we just spoke about him off the top of the show, and he's going to miss this week, but I thought Soldo played a brilliant game. He won the hit-outs, gave us first use. I can't remember the last time we won the centre clearances and the hit-outs, to be honest, and to see Dusty being able to just burst away from a centre clearance, kicking it inside 50, it's not something we're used to, and I think it made such a big difference for us.
He was, it was a real pleasing game from Soldo, and again, just shows the development we've got going on in the VFL. The one myth that really eats away at me is everyone goes, "Oh, geez, Richmond, surprising." Mate, for the last 2 years, our depth, we made the grand final in 2017 in the VFL. We made a prelim in 2018 in the VFL, and we're sitting on top of the ladder. So clearly our programs and what we're educating these guys with, giving them football IP, they're coming along beautifully. And I think Soldo's had, is his fourth year on the list?
Yep.
I think he's just, it's part of the Richmond football factory. And it was a wonderful game by him.
No, it's coming along nicely. And a big shout out to Brandon Ellis as well. He played a really good game again. And Camden McIntosh, your man, his new role, well, he's not his new role, but his role on the wing, he's really excelling and he's being a bit of a handful of opposition these days.
He's absolutely monstering the opposition, Camden. He's having a wonderful, wonderful season, actually. I don't think he's had a down game. Maybe a couple we've lost, but apart from that, he's had his probably most consistent year. And Brandon Ellis, we all debated this ad nauseum. He was in All-Australian form in about 2014 playing off a wing. We tried to make him something he isn't, which is a defender. And who would have thought? We put him back into his pet strength areas, and he's hitting the scoreboard again. He's racking them up. And actually, the one thing he's been criticised on, his hardness at the pill. He's been very hard at the contest, and really, really pleased that he's turned it around and he's doing great team things.
Yeah, agree. Definitely agree. I'm wrapped for him. So good on Ellis, and hopefully he can keep it up. And Loons, the Bombers, he played Fremantle and got over the line. 8-12-60, defeated Fremantle 7-11-53. Fairly low scoring game. Tipperary kicked 3, which is good to see him bounce back. He copped a bit of stick in the media, I think, the weeks prior. Shield got 2 goals and 25 touches. Merritt is your number one player by far, I reckon. 35 touches. He just finds the ball at will, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. It's good to see him. I think maybe the addition of Shield to the midfield as well has meant that it makes it a bit more difficult for the opposition to choose who to tag, because last year he sort of struggled when he was tagged, but he's starting to break through that now. And now we're just starting to get a few more options in there, which is great. If he gets off the chain, then he's almost unstoppable.
Yeah, exactly right. The scoreline being so low, do you reckon is that just a Ross Lyon Fremantle factor? I mean, obviously their game the week before, I think it was against the Crows, was low scoring as well. Is that just how they play?
I feel like it might be, but I think part of it as well was the way we played was not fantastic either. Lately, we've been very keen on just bombing it into the 50 and just hoping that either Danaher will mark it or you'll get Tipper or Fantasia roving around trying to pick up the crumbs. But with no Fantasia, that gets a lot harder to do. And so I think Danaher kicked 4 behinds, Begley kicked 4 behinds, which really didn't help the fact that it was quite low scoring. But yeah, I think it was probably a combination of both Fremantle and Essendon's own inability, I guess.
And Loonerty, I'd like to say, I know these two are two polarising footballers over their journey, but it seems like they're probably having their best years for a couple of years in Zaharakis and Heppel. Have certainly lifted their output, and looks like they're having very good years.
Yeah, Heppel for sure is having a pretty good season. I think he was both of them actually were a bit invisible. Although I think actually Zaharakis got 30-ish, maybe.
Yeah, 32 and Heppel had 27.
Yeah, so they're both playing reasonably. Zaharakis comes in and out. He'll have some pretty poor games. I think last week against the Swans he was pretty average. But Heppel has started to form a pretty good partnership with Shield and Merritt as well. I think it was against it might have been against Brisbane. In one quarter, the three of them just went absolutely bananas, and we just pulled right away from them as a result of their efforts. But yeah, I'd say maybe not career best for them, but they're definitely improved over last year, or at least the start of last year.
Yeah, so if you look at his numbers on the weekend, Zaharakis had he actually laid 5 tackles, and I know that hasn't been a strong point of his game, but also had 5 inside 50s. So he had a very, very competent game.
Yeah, it's good. It's just the consistency, I think, with him. He'll play these really good games every now and then, but it's just whether he can back it up the following week that has been missing a bit, I'd say.
With Heppel, there's a few Essendon supporters who, maybe in the past more so than now, questioned his ability as a leader, but at the same time weren't sure if he had anyone else in the team who could be that Joel Selwood, that Luke Hodge type leader. What do you make of Heppel's leadership?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'm not sure if... So I think he's fine as a captain, but I think we do have other options. I think Cale Hooker would be a fantastic captain. And even Michael Hurley, either of those two seem to be the ones that a lot of the players get around. I think Hooker as well, the fact that he was one of the, back when they were all suspended, he was one of the very first to re-sign and show his commitment. So I feel like he might be a better leader in that sense than Heppel. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think a lot of people commented on the on Heppel and Myers smiling after losing the game against Sydney. I don't know whether you guys saw that.
Yeah, as everywhere.
Yeah, which, I don't know whether it was just a quick moment from Heppel sort of consoling him, and we caught one smile in when they're probably still feeling pretty crap that they lost the game. Maybe it was just 1 second that out of, the rest of the night where they were probably miserable.
I think that's how it was explained though too. I think it was explained that way. He was just basically saying, "Hey, head up, mate." It was a tough gig. Trying to kick it from 60. I think he just tried to say, keep your head up, and then the rest followed.
Yeah, I think that's all it probably was. But people just latched onto it, especially like the Essendon board, really. Yeah, but I don't think that there's no need for him to be stood down or anything like this. I think he's capable, but maybe he's not the best leader in the team.
Oh, fair enough. And I think that whole smiling thing was blown out of proportion. I think there are times where, you sometimes see opposition players talking and laughing with each other after the game, after you've been belted. That's probably a worse look in my eyes than what Heppel was doing, because it's an ongoing conversation kind of thing where you probably should be a bit more in the moment with your teammates, I suppose. What he did, there was absolutely zero issue in that. It was just a microsecond moment that was captured, and it was as simple as that. But
agreed.
Huge game this week, though, fellas. I mean, Essendon fighting to get back into the 8, and we're somehow in the 8 trying to create some separation. You obviously got the bad news today about Devon Smith. I think he's out for the rest of the year now. I think he's been one of your best players as well. Just with his forward pressure is just absolutely unbelievable. Is Fantasia, or Fantasy, whichever way we want to go with it, is he a chance to come back, or is he out as well?
He's still out. I think he's out for another 2 or 3, unfortunately. Losing both of them, like Smith sets such a standard for the pressure for the entire team, really. Especially in that forward half, it's really important. But so to have him, both him and Fantasia out will really be damaging to us in terms of the pressure.
Yeah, it's a huge out.
I rate Devon Smith in your top 3 footballers in your club. He's an absolute jet, seriously talented footballer. Do you think it was a mistake playing him injured? Was it the Anzac? What was the game he went into? The last game where he actually went in with a crook knee and he hasn't played since. Was that the Collingwood game?
I think it might have been, yeah.
Was that a mistake, you reckon, playing? Should they give him a bit more time off? Or?
Well, possibly. But I think it was a new issue that they didn't... Not the known issue with his knee. So I think they just sort of let that play out. I'm not sure how bad the injury actually was and whether they didn't expect it to be aggravated or what was going on, really. I guess, obviously, in hindsight, you probably would rest him more, but if he thought he was good to go... Yeah, exactly. If he thought he was good to go, the doctors thought he was good to go, then, not much you can do about it. Yeah.
And CB, I suppose one of the big attacking points for Essendon's game is their rebound off the half-back line with Sard breaking the lines. He's in a bit of form. His run and carry, we always knew was very good, but he's actually become a lot more damaging in recent times. Who are we going to put on him to try and quell his influence? Because he could just really slice us open with those quick kicks.
Depends. I guess it depends what we've got set for the other way, isn't it? Because the one thing, like Sard's a great rebounding defender, but he's a bit unaccountable. So are we looking to expose that coming the other way?
I think that's the way to do it.
I disagree. Yeah.
You reckon he's accountable?
I think he's one of our best defenders, like just playing defensively. I think he's probably leading our best and fairest at the moment. When the ball goes near him, I have no worries whether he has it or whether he's, whether there's a marking contest. I'm very calm if Sard's there.
What about when the ball's? What about when the ball's in general play and it's turned over and there's a quick breakaway back down? Is he a two-way runner? Because I don't know, I've often got the impression that he only is really keen to use his pace running forward with the ball as opposed to back.
It might be a change for this year, but he's been two-way running really well. And I don't know whether it's just the fact that he's just that quick that I never really feel worried if an opposition has a bit of a gap on him, because you always sort of feel like he'll chase them down. He's been, like I said, I think he'd probably be at the top for us this year so far.
Oh, good. Well, I think the bloke that we should put on him would be Jason Castagna, who's quick and he's a good defensive forward. Can play a good defensive role and trying to shut him down a bit.
He plays a bit taller too, Castagna. He's actually surprisingly good overhead mark of the ball under pressure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because I wouldn't put Rioli in. I think Rioli will come in this week, but I think George probably is the man to go onto Sard.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The other interesting matchups, more from an Essendon perspective, is what they're going to do with Hooker and Hurley. Every time we play you guys, I always feel like, maybe because I've always had only one tall forward, which happens to be the same thing again this week with Riewoldt out, obviously, but I always feel like you might be more beneficial to swing one of Hooker or Hurley forward to try and exploit us down back, and especially now with Rance out of the equation as well. Do you reckon we're going to see a bit more of that on Saturday night?
I don't think so. So we've got, I think both Mitch Brown and Sean McKernan are free to come back in now. So probably Brown will come back in.
To play that, so we really play forward?
Yeah, so Brown was in really good form, playing as centre half forward and just roaming up the wings. I think on Anzac Day he had something like 25 touches, 3 goals. Was in really good form, but he just injured his wrist on a bad landing and has been out for I think 4 games or something like that now. So I think we'll still see Hooker and Hurley both back. It might be that if you're only going with one tall forward, then I feel like the play would probably have one of them playing on them, and then have the other just as the sort of roaming intercept mark, which will probably suits Hooker more, but Hurley can play it as well. He played it against Fremantle, I think, a bit more.
And that's dangerous for us because traditionally we blaze away, and players like McGovern, Harry Taylor, and anyone who's got a reasonable bit of height and plays loose is just going to have a field day. So if you do go with that lineup, I think that's going to be a bit of an advantage to you unless we start lowering our eyes, which we sort of started doing against Hawthorn, which was good. But if we play our old way, we'll be in trouble.
The last two games in particular, our use of the forward handball's been far more effective. Mm-hmm. And if you've noticed, we're running and gunning a lot harder, and we're not giving the ball. We're not really bombing as much as we were. We've actually changed how we put our forward entries in. And
we had to because we were getting nothing from it.
Yeah, correct. And that's why all of a sudden, if you look at our scoring, we've lifted to I think the last 3 weeks we've kicked 100 points a couple of times, or we've nearly kicked 100 points every game. So they've clearly worked it out, and we're a far more effective scoring team at the moment.
And Loons, I suppose the big talking point for Essendon is the turnovers that occur when put under pressure. Do you reckon that's a fair assessment? Is that one of the weaknesses of the Bombers?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's that, and if the corridor gets shut down, we just revert into our shells basically and try and play a sort of a possession game, which is not what we're suited to. So obviously, we're best when you have Sard, you have McKenna, Tipper or Fantasia sort of getting the ball on half back and just using pace to get forward. But if the middle of the ground is completely shut off, then we just revert into trying to go for the switch too often, or just kicking it long in hope, really. So that's really the keys is putting the team under pressure and keeping the corridor closed off.
And we're actually not too bad at doing that. And Kiwi Tiger made this post today on our preview thread, I think it was, that if you watch Camden McIntosh closely, he'll always be the last player on the fat side of the ground guarding the corridor. So we do have that very deliberate setup to make sure teams can't just come back through the middle and away they go. But obviously our game plan is to try and force you to kick down the line, so it's going to be interesting to see who can get the upper hand there. What about Dusty? Yeah. Back in some good form. Do you send someone to him, or do you just let him and Stringer go head-to-head for a bit and see what happens?
I think that's probably going to be it. We typically don't play taggers. So I think Stringer went head-to-head with Fife for a bit on Saturday and did all right. He actually was really impressive when he went into the midfield. And I think it's going to take someone like that just to have the strength to go with Dusty, really.
The best thing is neither of them are going to go anywhere near each other after the ball's been bounced. They'll stand side by side and then they'll split and go their own forward way.
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. From our perspective, CB, Merritt obviously is a ball magnet. I know we don't traditionally tag anyone, sometimes much to our detriment, but do we have someone maybe keep a close eye on him just in case he starts racking up some big numbers again?
I think our midfield has taken on different dynamics since we've stuck Caddy in there. Caddy's been excellent in the middle. There's another big-bodied midfielder around Prestia, Lambert, Dusty, and those guys coming through. I think we'll back our guys in. We've done that all year. I think we know he's going to rack up some pill, but I think Prestia and those guys are just going to go do their thing. That's how I feel about it. So obviously they'll put a bit of time into him, but I think we'll the way Richmond play, we'll back our system in. If that makes sense.
Presty's having a very good year. He's looking the fittest he's ever looked. I think he's almost going under the radar, if that's even possible. But yeah, I'm tipping Presty to have a pretty big game this week.
Oh, he's had a very good year. As you know, I've defended him on the board a few times. I think the key one, like I said, I think which has helped everyone was putting another big body in there, getting Caddy up the ground onto the pill, which has allowed our forward line of Baker, Bolton, Rioli, Castagna, all those blokes to do their thing forward in the forward half. So, Dion's been good. Kane Lambert, unsung hero again. He's had a great year as well, I reckon.
Now, the obvious issue we've got on our hands now is the fact that Soldo is still going to miss this week, which is complete bullshit, as we spoke about earlier. Nankervis is obviously out, so we're virtually down to Chol or CCJ, who is only 19 years old, isn't really physically developed, and I would feel extremely bad for him if he was thrown in against Bellchambers, because he will just have a field day. Is it Chol by default that comes in?
Well, I was going to ask you, Loonerty, who are your two ruckmen at the moment? Are you still persisting with the dude from Freo?
No, God, no. I hope not.
He played last week, though, didn't
he? He didn't play against Freo. He was dropped.
Oh, it must have been the week before.
Sydney he played and was very bad.
Ty Vickery bad?
Oh, I don't know if that's Ty Vickery bad, but just, not great.
So who are your rucks?
So we've been going with Bellchambers, obviously, as main ruck, and then Danaher will relief occasionally, and if it's like a ball in the forward line, then sometimes Stringer goes in. Doesn't win many hit outs, but you know.
I reckon I wouldn't be surprised if big CCJ gets a crack at it this week. Actually, I'll back him in over Chol to come in.
Oh, he will get eaten alive by Bellchambers.
Yeah, I think either way. I think all our ruckmen now that Soldo's gone, I think Bolter, I think Jones and Mabs, they're all going to get monstered, mate. And now that we've lost Grigg, our premiership ruckman, they're the three options.
Should bring him back out for a game. Can we veto the retirement and chuck him out there?
Just king hit, mate. Just go whack a couple. It doesn't matter. He's never coming back. You know.
Even married. He's coaching. We could even chuck him in. He can sign him up one of those like 10-day contracts like the NBA or something and put him out there. It's a real concern.
Oh, look, you know what? We've just got to take the thing that we're just going to have to be as best we can competitive in there. And then once the ball hits the ground, we just have to back our blokes in. So,
and I suppose, to be fair, after thinking about it a little bit more, the only good thing to take away from it is our midfielders will be so used to not having first hands on the ball anyway, because Nank doesn't really win the taps, that it's not going to be too much of a shock to their system, I suppose.
Yeah. And I'm wondering with Bolter's had some good games now, and he really, if you haven't seen much of him, Lindy, he's got an unbelievable. He can do everything. Actually, the guy's like Superman. The only thing he's missing is jocks and a cape, right? But he's got a very good jump on him. So you're going to have to find a way at the centre bounces. He's been sort of almost jumping over the top, hadn't he? Michaels?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a really good natural spring. So it'll be interesting to see whether he actually takes first ruck, and depending on what they start them forward with Tom Lynch, just to stretch Essendon a bit if we get the ball moving forward.
Yeah, a few different options. It will be an interesting selection.
I think just on that quickly, like I said before, it seems like when we do get a clearance, there's not much thought given to it, and so it will just end up being a bit of a bomb hack kick sort of into the 50, and just hope that Danaher or someone or Stringer or someone will mark it. So I'm not sure that that's as much of a concern as it would be against other teams. For us, our main way of scoring is just rebound.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the strength of both teams, isn't it? Both teams rely on the half back line. So you guys have got Sard and those guys. And on the other side, we've had a revelation in putting Titch Edwards on the half back line. So we've got Titch and Backer Hooley coming off our half back line, who are just bloody lightning quick. And then Bloston's no slouch either. And actually, there's the other one we didn't talk about, Michael, was Bloston going in the midfield. It didn't work 2 years ago. All of a sudden, it bloody worked.
Yeah, and I don't know why. What changed this time? But he was very good in there. Do you guys have any other players set to come back in, Loons, or do you reckon you're going to go in fairly unchanged?
So obviously Smith will come out, and I'm not sure who will come in to replace him. Probably Myers. He was far too good in the VFL, and he always is. He goes back down to VFL and dominates, but I think this week he had 29 touches and 3 goals, but then it just doesn't translate when he gets back into the AFL side. But I think he'll come back in. And then probably, I'd say Mitch Brown will come in probably for Francis. And aside from that, I don't see any changes happening, really.
And CB, for us, the other change that is probably on the cards, and I think the board is a little bit divided with this one, is Rioli coming back in. I'm of the opinion, and it's probably the unpopular one, that I know he designed the jumper with his family. I know it's the dream time of the G game, but I don't know if we should be picking players based on occasion. I'd rather, I think we're a good enough team and it's a professional environment to pick players based on form. And based on form the last couple of weeks, by all reports, Dan Butler would be the one that would be first in if you're going strictly off how their performance has gone in the VFL. But I don't think it's going to happen that way. I honestly think Rioli will come in, but I just really hope that the form line's taken into account.
Well, I think you got to remember Rioli, before he got banged up, he copped a massive quad corky against the Swans, and he copped 3 weeks of an absolute pounding. And by the time the Dogs got him, he was struggling with the Dogs game, and then they finished him off. So I think it was good that he played in the reserves on the weekend. That shows that Dimmer isn't just picking favourites and putting them back in. It's good that he actually backed the current squad in. I would think, it's funny thinking about it, I wonder if Jack Higgins could do with a spot in the Rezzies, and he actually comes in for Higgins. I don't think, given that Bolton was on our website in the coach's corner thing, that means he ain't getting dropped. I wonder, and I don't think they're going to drop Connor Menadue. I think they're happy with what he's doing in the role he's playing in the back half. I wonder if it's Higo's spot that might be in a bit of danger with Rowley coming in.
Well, the other one would be Baker, but he hasn't really done a lot wrong either. To be fair, none of them really done a lot wrong.
You know what? I know he had a few detractors from his game on the weekend, but I actually thought he went pretty well, Baker. He got caught a couple of times, but he's taken the game on.
Yeah.
You know? And he's still learning. But I just think it's Higo, and it could be Baker, but I'm leaning towards maybe Higo might get a spell just to rack up a few touches in the Rezzies and get some touchback. I mean, he had 17 disposals, 6 marks. Actually, not a bad game. 1 goal, 1. Maybe it won't be a couple of tackles. I don't know.
It's a shit time to be a selector if they've got to try and find a way to get Rioli in. And that's what I mean. Like, someone's going to be really unlucky and probably unfairly dropped.
And don't tell me. We paid against the Dogs when we were too arrogant at the selection table and didn't have a couple of key backs. Tell me we're not thinking that it's going to be the Nathan Broad and Noah Bolter showing the ruck and we bring in another flanker. Tell me they're not thinking that.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked. They might have seen that we got by okay and they might have a crack at it, but that's got disaster written all over it.
Just, no, Hardwick, I know you're a big fan of the show. Dimmer, please select a freaking ruckman. Don't do something dumb. Right, don't do it.
All will be revealed. All right, before we let you guys go, we'll get a tip, including margin from each of you. CB17, I'll start with you first.
I'm going to sound like a bit of a flog, but I'm actually dead serious. We're starting to get our mojo going the last 2 weeks. You can see the wheels starting to spin a bit. And I wouldn't be surprised to see us win by about 6 goals, maybe 7 goals if we get a run on.
You realise I'm placing this on the Essendon board. Like, you've just really... Oh, okay. No, fair enough. It's your tip. Loons, what are you going with?
Yeah, I feel like Richmond as well, but I think it'll be much closer. I think it'll probably be under 20, I'd say. I'm aware that I'm pretty sure I said something similar last year for the same game, and we got absolutely eviscerated. But yeah, I'll stick to it. I think Richmond by maybe 15. Yeah,
I reckon Tigers will get up by about 23. I think you guys always put on a good fight. It's always a good game, really, until... I mean, we've probably blown it out a little bit the last couple of times, but it's a different ball game now, a bit more on the line. I think it'll be a close contest, so it should be really interesting to see how both teams handle the occasion. Reminder, the game is on Saturday, 25th of May at 7:25pm. Make sure you get there early to join in the celebrations and all the pre-game entertainment with the dancers and all that kind of stuff. It's always a really good night down at the Dreamtime at the G. So, Captain Blood 17 and Loonerty, thanks for coming on and joining in with the rant at the start and for providing some good insight and analysis on the game coming up this weekend.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
No dramas at all. Until next time, go Tigers.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.